thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And let's have a special guest. I've invited him on for obvious reasons. I mean, everything happening with the nation of Israel, Trump administration, Gaza. So please welcome my guest. You've gotten to know him over the years. Some of you have been introduced to him recently through this channel. Avi Lipkin is joining me right now. Avi, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. You're there in Israel. I just want to thank you so much for doing this.
These Zoom programs are the reason for my existence.
You know what? Praise God. You know, pre-COVID, this wasn't really a thing. And now you look, but it's enabled us to connect with people throughout the world. You know, people get to hear from you. I get to do this and literally throughout the world. Interesting how that works, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right, let's just roll, Avi, because there's so much to talk about. I'm going to ask you about Iran. It's very concerning. The hostage release over the weekend is absolutely awful and horrific. And Trump and Gaza. So I tell you what, can we just start with Iran and then backtrack from there?
Whatever. Sure.
Yeah, let's start with Iran. So if we look at Iran, Iran is still a problem. What do you think is going to happen? Is Israel going to do anything to eliminate the Iranian problem?
Well, I think that Israel will, the word on the street, the word in the news is we are looking probably at about 1 or 2 weeks. I think a lot depends now on the hostage exchange. Israel wants to extract as many of our people out of the horrible sewer conditions that the Jews are in. They're in I think it's now down to 76 hostages, which have not yet been freed. But it seems like, I'm changing the subject a little bit, that the hostage situation is going to hit a dead end. But that doesn't mean anything, what I think, because in the end, all of a sudden, Hamas says, okay, we'll release more people. And, you know, the Hamas was saying all along that they were going to attack. And our top generals just did not take them seriously. It was called the concept. The concept was Hamas will not do anything. And they started with launching fire balloons, which would fly over our fields and start massive fires in the agricultural areas. They started doing demonstrations, all-night demonstrations, like only a few hundred yards away from the Jewish homes and settlements. They did all kinds of things to make our life miserable. And one day they shot one of our guards, and they were told by our Supreme Court that we are not allowing our soldiers to fire back. So they started killing our soldiers. I mean, the Supreme Court is mentally ill. I want to say socialist, but it's mentally ill. And the top leadership of our military was controlled by people and by money in Washington. They were part of the Biden administration. And, only now things are coming to light. But like USAID, USAID, they gave the Hamas terrorists and the PLOs over $130 billion. And they knew it was terrorism. They knew it was harming Israel. They knew it was going to cost us lives. But Hamas was saying all along that our purpose is to build up. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to go over the border. We're going to kill Israelis, and thousands of them, which they did. And we're going to take hostages. And then we're going to release our terrorists from Israeli jails. Everything they said in their script was true. And everything came true. And it got to the point where they dug these tunnels with money from the United States. And we could not, during the battle, we couldn't even find where our people were. Now, there are rumors, which could be true, that our intelligence knew exactly where they were, but that everything was booby-trapped. And that if we had gone in to release the hostages by commando force, everyone would have gotten blown up. So basically, Netanyahu surrendered. Netanyahu had no choice but to stop everything. The Hamas is demanding that we completely pull out of Gaza, which we are doing with the exception of we can always go back in. And so meanwhile, we are maneuvering with Hamas to get as many people out, and they get like 60 people per head of Jewish hostage. So you have to remember, if we go into Iran, what is going into Iran? Going into Iran is the Israeli Air Force goes in, blows up the nuclear program, which is under the mountain. I mean, it's not something you can just blow up. It usually means dropping 3 2-ton bombs, one after another, on exactly the same place to penetrate the mountain and get into where the radioactive material is and the rockets. I would say this sounds maybe strange, and the main project is to achieve regime change, and to do that, we blow up all the oil in Iran. When you blow up the oil, then the people of Iran don't have gas or heating or electricity. Everything stops in Iran. Factories close down. People cannot go to work. People starve. And then there will be massive demonstrations to overthrow the regime. I think that's really what we're looking at. But I think at this time, the focus is on Hamas. Finish the story with Hamas. Praise God, we did a pretty good job in Lebanon. I think we are seeing miracles that we never would have seen before the Hamas attack. And even Syria, we never had a dream that we would take the top of Mount of Hermon, that we would go back to the areas that we conquered in 1974, which Henry Kissinger, a former Secretary of State, forced us to withdraw from. But once Bashar al-Assad was gone, Israel went back and took all the territories that we had given up because there was no more Bashar al-Assad government, instead replaced by ISIS, backed by Turkey. We got ISIS in Turkey on our border now. So, but the thing is that we basically eviscerated the Syrian army completely. So that's good news. Hezbollah is extremely weakened. The word in the intelligence is that about 80% of Hezbollah has been destroyed. 80%.
Wow.
The problem is that you have groups in Lebanon, like the Christians, like the Druze, like the Sunni Muslims, that they are just petrified because they've seen the butchering of their people by Hezbollah. So it may be we go back into Lebanon again. The problem is, the Biden administration was constantly sticking its leg out to trip us. The Biden administration did not want us to win. And the Biden administration set up embargoes on all the weaponries so that we couldn't fight. And so we had our arms and legs tied by the Biden administration. And I know your listeners and viewers are very savvy. If they go into the internet today and they read all the articles about U.S. aid, USAID, President Biden gave these people $130 billion. That's crazy. That's taxpayer money going to support terrorism and destroy Israel. And I'm not even talking about Iran. How much money did Clinton and Obama and Osama Obama and Biden give to Iran? The United States has been a critical enemy of Israel.
Oh, it's been unbelievable watching the U.S. aid being exposed, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. But I can't remember how much money it is that came out over the weekend that was given just for the cement to build the tunnels for Hamas. U.S. taxpayer money, and that was the intention of that money, for the cement, for the tunnels. In fact, even setting up a cement plant there in Gaza through the U.S. aid money. You're looking at this going, this unbelievable. Avi, with that, I want to ask you about the hostage situation. We'll get to Trump and Gaza, where we see this going with Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and everything, because Trump has now said over the weekend he wants to divide Gaza, at least this is what I've heard. He wants to divide Gaza and sell it off or give it off to different Arab communities, which is concerning to me. But let me ask you about the hostage situation, because over the weekend, there's one of the hostages that was released. It was absolutely horrific. He looked like he was a Holocaust victim from the days of Nazi Germany. One of the things that kept him going was the hope to see his wife and children. He didn't even know that they had been killed. And he found out after he had been released. And I mean, it was just absolute wickedness. And yet we have so much of the world that still seems to think is still supporting Hamas and still supporting this anti-Semitism. But when you look at this over the weekend, what does that do to Israelis? I mean, and you're releasing, like you said, all these terrorists are being released. I'm curious on the thoughts of you, Israelis in general, as you see something like this.
Well, I would say two words: reverse psychology. The reverse psychology is, if this is what our people look like coming out of the hostage situation, then we have to turn the world upside down to get the rest of the people out. And a lot of them are dead. But we want to get the bodies, because in Judaism, burying the body is a holy commandment. So I think Netanyahu and Trump together are working to see what are the possibilities to get the remainder out. And if we feel that Gaza is never going to give the people back, we are going to return to the war.
So when we look at this with Trump saying, okay, we're going to level Gaza, obviously this can't just be done overnight,
Right.
Because of the hostage situations. And then it was, I can't remember, it was one of the Israeli spokespersons said, it's going to take, after it's cleaned out, it's going to take 9 years just to build it to this dream center.
Well, it's from the very beginning of the war, our top general said it's going to take 5 years to clear out all of the nests of terrorism of Hamas. It's been 1 year and 4 months. So the fighting could and probably, I believe, will resume. The problem here in Israel is that we would have to go back again to fighting in the Lebanese front, the Gaza front, the Iranian front. We don't even know what's going to happen with Syria, because in Syria there are Shiites and there are Sunnis fighting each other, but they're both preparing to attack Israel. So, it's like everyone was shocked that Israel succeeded in the way it succeeded. This is a brilliant military few months that we had. But like I said before, our elections are in October of 2026. And Netanyahu, to win, has to finish the job. So we're talking about another year and a half to get the Hamas completely obliterated. And all these terrorists that we released, we're going to find them. And the problem in Israel is we have a Supreme Court that's controlled by communists and socialists, which every time the Israeli government wants to do something, they say no. The Supreme Court vetoes everything the Israeli government does. So you know what the Israeli government said? Let them all go. We'll get them. And, it reminds me of a Texas joke. You ready for a Texas joke?
Sure.
Two Texas motorcycle cops stop a beautiful blonde in a red sports car, and she's speeding. And where do they stop her? In Waxahachie. And so one cop says to the other, how do you spell Waxahachie? She says, I don't know. So they say, you know what, let her go. We'll catch her in Waco.
It's like...
That's a Texas joke. So we're going to get these terrorists one way or another. All of them. And they're all going to be eliminated. And the Supreme Court in Israel cannot say anything.
I look at it, and then you mentioned Judea and Samaria also. I want to ask you about that. Listen, we will get to Trump, Gaza, and the Arab nations that he says he wants to divide Gaza with in a minute. But before we get to Judea, Samaria, and then back over to Trump and Gaza, Avi, how can people connect with you? BiblicalAlliance.com?
Correct, yes. BiblicalAlliance.com. And I don't know, the big brother, at least under Biden, was interfering with money raising. But I do answer the email. So if people write to me, I can give them a more direct way if they want to make contributions. And if they don't want to make contributions, God's in charge. I'm not concerned about that. I love to get emails. I love to answer them. I also have a YouTube account, Avi Lipkin YouTubes, and people can, I have one weekly YouTube I do that gets posted, and people can go back and watch all my YouTubes going back to the war, beginning of the war and before. And so that's biblicalalliance.com. My email is vicmord, V-I-C, like half of Victor, V-I-C, half of Mordecai, M-O-R-D, like Dennis, vicmord, 2001 at yahoo.com. And if people write to me, I answer.
Great. Thank you so much. So make sure you stay connect with Avi. He'll help you work through whatever. And as he said, he'll answer your questions too. Okay, Avi, let me ask you this: you've been on here before. You've mentioned Jews moving back to Judea and Samaria from the U.S., even bringing their Christian spouses with them.
Right.
But you have the problem in Judea and Samaria too of these people inside Israel that are also radicalized. How does that get rectified in more Jews being able to move over there?
It depends what kind of radicalization you're talking about, because we have Jews who become fanatic Orthodox and they oppose all this American tourism idea. And then we've got those who are socialists and communists, maybe 10% of the population, who oppose Bibi Netanyahu. And they don't want Jews or Christians, because the Jews and Christians who will be coming home believe in the entirety of the land of Israel. And I believe in the entirety of the land, the unity of the entire land of Israel. I'm a Jew who believes that the borders will be from the Nile to the Euphrates. And I believe we're going to get millions and millions of Jews, 80% of whom are intermarried with Christians. And a Jew is not going to come to live in Israel without the Christian spouse and children. And so the rabbis have to wake up also and stop, being obstructive to all of it. I believe, now I don't know who the Messiah is. You guys know who the Messiah is. That's wonderful. But we know the Messiah is a Jew from Israel who speaks Hebrew. And Jesus was one of those, by the way. But I think that the commandment of God, all the way back in the beginning with Adam and Eve, was that we will be tending God's garden. I believe the whole Middle East is going to be turned green into a luscious Garden of Eden by the Jews and the Christians who are going to be coming home and settling all the land from the Nile to the Euphrates. We have the technology for water desalination. We have solar panels, so we have the electricity. This is a project. By the way, this is a project that California should be using.
Yeah. Our governor, right? This state has some serious political problems.
Yeah, I think he's more concerned about the inkfish or something, some kind of a fishy.
Yeah, it's the smelt that's not even indigenous to California, and no one's seen any in 10 years. So it's just evil policies.
Yeah, I think it's not only just about Israel. The Democrats are like they're to the moon and back. They're to Mars and back. And I'm just hoping that the good people of California can get rid of this dinosaur communist party and wake up to really what's going on. And like I said before, California should be a state that will be turned completely green. All the deserts of the interior should be turned green. And there should never be a water shortage in California. Israel has the ability, the technology to do that. All you have to do is, as it says in the New Testament, ask and it will be granted, seek and ye shall find, knock and the door will open.
Yeah. So thinking of what you mentioned about Israel being green and the desalination plants, I think it's here in Santa Barbara, California, where they had already put in all kinds of money into the desalination plant there, and then some politicians decided to end it after just a ridiculous amount of money was spent. And it could have solved so many of the problems. It can be done just following Israel's lead on it. But let me ask you, because every time I go to Israel, which is often, I'm going to be there, as you know, in just a few more weeks. But when I go there, I see more vineyards it's just beautiful when you see the prophecies about when I say the Messiah comes back, you say when he comes. You see the prophecies about how Israel's going to turn green. You go up to the Galilee region and you see, I mean, yeah, mangoes growing up there. You have, fruit to supply everything. You see the rolling hills with the vineyards, all these beautiful things. It's remarkable, and I know it's going to be fulfilled. I, like you, also believe that entire Mideast region is going to be like the Garden of Eden. I've read the prophecies about it. There's also one regarding, and it's so exciting to go to Israel and see things creep along. They're going to be fulfilled in that day. I know they will, but you can see them moving this direction. And even Gaza, there's prophecies about Gaza. It was Ezekiel 25, Isaiah 11, Zephaniah chapter 2, where the inhabitants of Gaza will be removed, and Gaza will be turned into a place of pasture for the tribe of Judah. And you look and you think, this is coming. So as I look to Gaza, I don't know if this is part of what's happening right now is going to be that ultimate fulfillment of Zephaniah. But Avi, it is just unbelievable for anybody to go to Israel, and even though you have wars up north in the northern part in Syria, Lebanon, Gaza, God has protected Israel. He's the keeper of Israel. He never slumbers or sleeps, and he's given them victory after victory, and these prophecies will be fulfilled. You know, just thinking about them, Avi, it's exciting because you can see things moving.
You know, I have to tell you, I was born in 1949. In 1955, I was 6. I started going to Hebrew school. Then we had the Six-Day War in 1967. I was in the States. I didn't make it to Israel for that. But all of a sudden, I felt that I don't know if you remember the movie Patton, but yeah. General Patton says, I have to be in that battle. I cannot miss my role in history. And that's how I felt about living in America. I said, I love America, but I've got to get to Israel because that's where it's all going to happen. I've been here 55 years, praise God. And I'm so happy I moved to Israel. My 2 sons have traveled a lot to the States with me, without me, and my grandkids. And they all say to me when they come back, praise God, we're in Israel. This is the place to be. And all these things are going to happen. We see it happening. We see the miracles before our very eyes. And, you know, I came here when Israel had a population of 3 million Jews. Then it grew to 5 million, then to 7.5 million. The population is 10 million today with Arabs. But think for a moment, there are 6 million Jews in the U.S., 8 million outside of Israel. They're married to 80% Christian or non-Jewish spouses, which means we're talking about 13, 14 million people who have the right to move to Israel. And when you add to that, there are a lot of Hispanic people who have Jewish blood. They believe in Jesus Christ, but they say, we were Jews in Spain in 1492 or Portugal. There are a lot of people who are just dreaming and demanding to come home to Israel. And I'm actually, you know, the head of the Judeo-Christian Bible Block Party. And so we are working to facilitate the homecomings of all these people. And you know what? We're going to be settled from the Nile to the Euphrates. And if you want to know why I say Nile, read Ezekiel 29. Yes. Let me not say anything more. The last verse of Ezekiel 28 and the whole chapter of 29. And, you know, one of the countries that's going to take in tens of millions of Muslims from Egypt is the United States. So it's not going to be very user-friendly for Jewish people or Christians. So, you know, we've got to overcome the hatreds of 2,000 years. And we've got to get a situation where Jews and Christians love each other. That's the only way it's going to happen.
Well, you know, Avi, you mentioned it'd be 13 million moving into the U.S., a Jewish person plus their spouse moving there. And then you factor in their children also. However many children they have, it's going to be a lot more than 13 million. And I do believe also Israel's going to have that land, just as you mentioned, even with the border of Nile. Okay, so you mentioned in there, we still haven't gotten to Trump and Gaza yet, but you keep sparking my mind. to other things. So with Egypt, you mentioned all these Muslims are going to be moving from Egypt to the U.S. I mean, currently, with the current administration, I don't see that as happening. But, things seem to change here every day. What's your thinking on why they'd be moving to the U.S.?
Well, no, what it says, I have to teach the chapter, but I'll just do it in a few sentences. It says that Egypt's population doesn't say they will be killed. It says that the Nile River will become uninhabitable for 40 years. And it says that the Egyptian population will be scattered to the four corners of the earth. So, I would say think about the four corners of the earth. What country do you know? The United States is pretty empty, at least from the rock.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And so I think a lot will go to the United States, the Midwest, other places. One thing I haven't said yet, which I'm going to say regarding the Gaza Arabs, I think the ideal place to send the Gaza Arabs, and in the end they will agree to it, and will be Indonesia. Indonesia is a country of very big jungle islands. There's plenty of water. Everything is green. The Palestinians can have an island or some area which is, autonomous for them. Indonesia has 200 million Muslims. Indonesia has 20 Jews. So there's no threat to the Jewish people. So the Gaza Arabs can go to Indonesia. They will not be starving. There's plenty of food. And I'm going to say something going off into the future a little bit. Indonesia is about to go to war with China. Vietnam, Indonesia, Philippines, Formosa, Japan, all these countries are allied with the U.S. against China. China, I think, is now very warned of what could happen to China. Indonesia, therefore, becomes, under Trump, an ally of the United States of America. Indonesia, if they accept these terrorists, these Muslim guys. By the way, the Arabs of Gaza hate the Chinese too, because the Chinese are killing Muslims in the west of China, Xinjiang province. Now, regarding the United States, I would say out of 100 million Egyptian, it doesn't say they're going to die. It says they're going to be scattered. So out of 100 million population, I would say, 40, 50 million go to the U.S. But this will be horrible for the Jewish population. This will also, I say, you can't ask me one of these Jews and Christians going to Israel. This could happen after Ezekiel 29. But if we're looking at Jews and Christians going now, I think I mentioned on your program last time, or the time before, that I had lunch with a neo-Nazi from a militia in Florida, and he said, we're going to kill all the Jews in America. And if a Christian marries a Goldberg, the name becomes Goldberg, guess what? They're Jewish in the eyes of the Nazis. So you have in America, I say about 30 million Muslims, 10% of which are armed at least. That's 3 million. You've got neo-Nazis, 3 million, I would say, out of the total population of militias of 30 million. The black Muslims, a Nation of Islam, Louis Farrakhan, there are 4 million of them. They are all armed. And let me tell you, they hate the Jews.
They do. They absolutely hate the Jews. I was invited to go to Indonesia to speak a few different times. And one of the requirements, I haven't been able to go yet, but one of the requirements in my message, should I say yes, is I'm not allowed to talk favorably about Israel. Right.
Well, you know what? I don't talk favorably about Israel. I talk about God's message. And the thing is, can you talk about God's message?
I can talk about God's message, but if I bring up Jews specifically in too good of a light, apparently I was going to be removed. So I just thought that's interesting. So we see this anti-Semitism everywhere. Okay, I still want to come back to Judea and Samaria in a few minutes, because I was thinking also about the radical element of Muslims that are in those areas that have been radicalized because of what's happened. But let me go to Trump and the Gaza situation first, because as we look at it, so he says, hey, the U.S. is going to own Gaza, But where do you see this going, especially in light of Trump now saying, at least I've read it over the weekend, that he wants to split up Gaza to different Arab nations. But when I look biblically, Gaza is part of Israel, as part of the land that God gave Israel.
Right, that's what most Israelis say, that you cannot hand over Gaza to American administration. But what I will say, okay, now I'm saying something off the wall completely. I don't know if you know this, I'm sure you do, but for people who are listening or watching, the Egyptian army is massed on the Israeli border in the Negev and also in the Gaza area. The Egyptian army is preparing for war with Israel. Egypt has no enemy except for Israel. Israel doesn't want to attack Egypt. Israel has a peace agreement. But the Egyptians have this hard-headedness like Pharaoh. And, Pharaoh had a hard head and he got 10 plagues. And his charioteers were destroyed. So I think that Egypt should be careful when they want to destroy Israel. We gave them Sinai 3 times for peace. And each time we had to take it back in a war. And next time we take Sinai, there will be no more Egypt. There'll be nobody to give it back to. Gaza, we have nobody to give it back to because it's a sewer. I did patrol duty in Gaza in 1989. It's one big sewer. You cannot drive in a open Jeep, because the vacuum during the drive sucks in all the urine and feces into. I'm telling you, this is what I had to patrol in. But I think that if Egypt sees the U.S. military or U.S., let's say, backing of Israel, then they will not attack Israel. Under Biden would say, sure, hell, go for it, attack Israel. I think that would not happen with Trump. So I think in combination with what could happen with the Ezekiel 29, where Egypt just gets totally destroyed. It says from Aswan to Migdol. Migdol is on the Mediterranean. So you think for a moment, say, hey, wait a second. There was no Aswan Dam at that time. I have to tell you, I remember during the beginning of the so-called Arab Spring in 2011, that the Egyptians warned the Syrians that they were going to attack Syria because the Bashar al-Assad regime was Shiite against the Sunnis. Egypt is Sunni, so we're going to attack Shiite Syria. And Iran said, we're going to nuke the Aswan Dam. So there is the capability that Iran already has nuclear weapons, but we don't know anything. And, the Gaza Arabs had all these tunnels we didn't even know. Our military leaders had the same mentally retarded concept as we had in 1973 with the Yom Kippur War, where the generals didn't want to understand that Egypt could attack us, and they did, and Syria could attack us, and they did. Now it's Gaza. So Egypt, all of a sudden, sees the dangers facing Israel from Gaza, from Lebanon, from Syria, from the Houthis, from Iran. And they say, hey, this is the best time to attack Israel. Israel is in a weak point. And in addition, the Israeli public is divided. So the crazy left-wing anti-Bibi forces are saying, come and attack us. Egypt sees the same weakness as Gaza saw. Then there's another problem. Why I want America I want America in Gaza with us. You heard Turkey. Turkey owned Cyprus from 1571. 1571, April, there was a great sea battle in which the Catholic navies of Genoa, Venice, and Spain sank the entire Turkish fleet. And the Turks were the most powerful country in the world at the time. And the Turks said to the Italians and the Spanish, you're going to build us a completely new fleet. And in addition, as punishment, the Turks said to the Catholics, the Italians, give us Cyprus. Now, Cyprus was part of Italy at that time. Nobody knows the history. If you've been to Cyprus, all these road names have Italian names. And so in 1571, they got it. And then in 1878, most Americans don't know any history. It's okay.
It's true.
There was there was this great war between Britain, France, and Turkey. And the Turks lost. So the British did to Turkey what they did to China. They got a 99-year lease, as they did in China with Hong Kong, a 99-year lease with the Turks regarding Cyprus. So after 1878, how much is 99 years? 1977. So the Turks said, give us back our island. An agreement is an agreement. The problem is, meanwhile, you have 500,000 Christian Greeks in Cyprus, and the Turks are really upset about that. I know a lot of stories about the Turkish Navy right off the coast of northern Cyprus, and they conquered 40% of the island. Basically, the Turks could take the rest of Cyprus in 24 hours. So what I think is going to happen, I want to say I'm writing a book, but with the present war, I don't have time to write books. I'm too busy monitoring the news. I think the Israeli Navy is going to sink the whole Turkish Navy, and we can do it. So my book theoretically would be called The Second Battle of Lepanto, 1571, and going into 2026. Israeli paratroopers train on Cyprus with the Cypriot National Guard, and we are ready to fight the Turks on Cypriot territory. Don't forget also that the discovery of gas by Cyprus and Israel in partnership, and sending that gas to Greece and then over to Italy to help solve the energy problems of Europe. The Turks say, hey, no, wait a minute, that's our gas, because Cyprus belongs to Turkey. I'm talking now like a Turk, you know? Then there's another problem. If the Turks take Cyprus, Israel cannot fly out of Israel, because the Turks on one side, the Egyptians on the other side, all our air routes are blocked by the Turks. So this would be like an Armageddon war with the Turks. So if President Trump and the American military are standing with us united, that's very important regarding the possibility of war with Egypt and with Turkey. And so that's why I'm saying, you know, on the one hand, I'm very nationalist about keeping Gaza, but I'm more nationalist if America will stand with us and prevent these major Armageddon wars from happening.
Very fascinating. Do you think Gaza will be rebuilt?
Of course it will. The question is, what role, if any, will the Gaza Arabs have? You know, I would say that if the Gaza Arabs had any brains, which they don't, they would recognize Israel, say, okay, enough war, we're going to make peace. I mean, they're going to be lying. They still want to have war. You go into their mosques. All they do is talk about killing every Jew on the face of the earth. But I mean, at least if they had any brains, they'd come to the Israelis and the Americans and say, you know what, we're changing our tune. We really, really want peace with Israel. Let's rebuild Gaza. And then after they rebuild Gaza, you know, you know, I don't know if we have time. I have a joke, but it's a little off color. I can't tell you. When I'm with you, when we're having a beer or something, I'll tell you the joke.
We'll talk in Jerusalem. You can tell me it then. So,
well, you know what? Remember my words. You're going to say, Avi, tell us the joke that you told me privately.
I'm going to.
Yeah.
All right. So with the Abraham Accords, it's been, in a sense, you could say, groundbreaking, relations for Israel's regarding several Arab nations. How do you think the agreements will impact Israel's long-term security and regional relationships?
Well, I don't have to teach you the Bible. It says in Genesis 12:3, I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. And the Abraham Accords have been a blessing to Israel, obviously, because we have relations with the United Arab Emirates and with Dubai and all these other countries and Morocco. But they've been blessed too. Anybody who blesses us gets blessed. And it's kind of like, you know, Golda Meir once said, they asked her, when will there be peace? She said, when Muslim mothers will love their children more than they hate the Jews.
And that is absolute truth. And the problem is that the whole ideology is just driven by hatred. And you have Arab people that might hate each other, but they hate Israel more. And
Yeah.
the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And Israel, I just find it so fascinating. Israel's surrounded by all these enemies, but I keep going back to Psalm 121, where the Lord never slumbers or sleeps, he who keeps Israel. And it's time after time, it's been victory after victory. And now you have the threat of Egypt to the south. And interesting, they have all these weapons that have been given to Egypt from the Biden administration. You know, you look at what are they going to use those for? And it looks to me like it's just what you said. They have one enemy, and it's Israel.
Yeah. I mean, it could be that the purpose of the Biden administration, biblically, is to give all the enemies everything they want so that God will manifest himself at the right time and destroy all the enemies of Israel.
Yeah, you know what? That's a great point, because this obviously has been happening time after time for the last year and a half. It's just been remarkable to watch. I can't wait to go there. Avi, many people, you know, they watch Western media and they think, oh my gosh, Israel's, you know, how could you go visit Israel right now? It is a great time to go visit Israel. It's amazing within the borders of Israel. It is just, there's a peace that you can't describe. You know, Avi, I often tell people the worst part, the most frightening part about going to Israel, for me, is driving to Los Angeles International Airport. That is the worst part. Once I'm out of that airport, it's all good. Avi, how can people connect with you, and what would be a final word you'd like to share with everybody before we wrap up?
Well, firstly, of course, my website, like I said before, is www.biblicalalliance.com. And because it means Alliance of the Jews and the Christians in the End Time. And my email is vicmord, VICMORD, 2001 @yahoo.com. That appears in the Biblical Alliance website. And what I would say is that, you know, I'm 76. My whole life now, the last 37 years, has been dedicated to building support for Israel among the Christians, all kinds of Christians. And I can give you an analysis of the different types of Christians there are in the world, getting them mobilized to stand with Israel. Because guess what? Israel belongs to the Christians and the Jews in partnership. And Messiah is coming for Jews and Christians. He's coming for everyone. He's not coming only for the Southern Baptists, you know. You know, one of my favorite jokes, you know, what's the difference between Southern Baptists and Northern Baptists? This is a Texas joke, by the way. Northern Baptists go to hell. Get all the Jews and Christians united in love and working together. I think President Trump emulates that. And I'm so happy. I voted for him 3 times, 2016, 2020, and 2024. Very excited. My sons voted for him. My grandkids voted for him. So we're very, very excited with the present situation. Now we will see the real fireworks, the fulfillment of Bible prophecies. It's in our time.
It is in our time. And man, we live in exciting days. Absolutely, absolutely amazing days. I know you were friends with Chuck Missler many years ago. He used to say that all the time. We live in these absolutely amazing days. Talk about Bible times, going back 25 years when Missler was with you saying those things. You look where we are now. Now it is truly amazing. But again, God never slumbers or sleeps. He's the one who keeps Israel. And I want to remind everybody of this is in Psalm 122, verse 6, God says, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. If you want to know what God's prayer request is, that's God's prayer request for his people. That's interesting. We often ask people, what can I pray for? God says, hey, will you pray for this? Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. So keep that in mind. Listen, I can't wait to see you in just a few weeks, Avi. I'll be in touch via WhatsApp. And great. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to join me. And thank you, everybody. And listen, like, share, and subscribe. It really helps us to be able to get the word out and move things forward. It's really the only way that we really can is with your involvement. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we will see you back here tomorrow.